The Steelers' offense could look completely different this season, and the player who might have the biggest impact isn't the one generating the most headlines. While most fans are focused on DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers, or new head coach Mike McCarthy, another addition has the potential to quietly transform Pittsburgh's offense from day one. The more you look at what McCarthy wants this unit to become, the clearer it becomes why Michael Pittman Jr. could prove to be one of the Steelers' most important offseason additions. For years, Steelers fans have watched this offense struggle to consistently stay ahead of the chains. Too many drives started with conservative runs on first down, setting up second and long situations that forced the offense into predictable passing situations. Even when the roster had talented players, sustaining drives often became an uphill battle because the offense rarely dictated the pace early in possessions. That philosophy appears ready to change. Mike McCarthy's history tells a completely different story. Throughout his years coaching successful offenses, one consistent trend stands out. He believes in attacking defenses through the air on early downs. Instead of waiting until third down to become aggressive, McCarthy prefers creating manageable situations immediately by using efficient passing concepts that generate 5, 6, or 7 yards before the defense can fully settle into the drive. That approach isn't simply about throwing more passes, it's about making first down a weapon. Looking back at Pittsburgh's recent season shows just how dramatic this shift could be. In 2024, with Russell Wilson at quarterback, the Steelers ranked near the bottom of the NFL in first down passing attempts. Even after Aaron Rodgers arrived in 2025, they only climbed into the middle of the league. Compare that to Mike McCarthy's offenses with the Cowboys, where 4 of his 5 seasons finished inside the NFL's top 10 in first down passing attempts, including 3 seasons inside the top 3. His offensive philosophy has remained remarkably consistent. The goal is simple: create efficient drives before the defense ever has a chance to dictate the game, and that's exactly where Michael Pittman Jr. enters the picture. Pittman isn't being asked to become the offense's primary deep threat. That's not what makes him valuable. His greatest strength is something much more important in McCarthy's system: getting open quickly, winning underneath, securing the football, and immediately putting the offense in favorable situations. The numbers from last season paint an impressive picture. On short area targets, particularly routes developing within 9 yards, Pittman wasn't simply productive, he was one of the NFL's most efficient receivers. He finished among the league leaders in receptions and receiving yards in that area of the field, despite not leading the league in opportunities. What becomes even more impressive are the efficiency metrics. Pittman posted an outstanding reception rate of 84.5% on those short throws, ranking 3rd among NFL wide receivers. Think about that for a moment. Nearly every time the football came his way on those quick routes, he completed the play. That level of consistency is exactly what offensive coordinators dream about because it keeps drives alive without forcing unnecessary risks. Even more impressive was his yards per route run on those same concepts, where he ranked 4th in the NFL. Those aren't empty statistics. Those numbers placed him alongside, and in some categories ahead of, elite receivers like Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and several other top names around the league. That doesn't mean Pittman is a better overall receiver than those players. What it does mean is that within the specific role Mike McCarthy appears ready to emphasize, Pittman has already demonstrated elite efficiency. That's exactly why this move makes so much sense. Instead of forcing difficult third down conversions every series, the Steelers can create 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3, or 2nd and 5 situations simply by letting Pittman do what he already excels at. Those manageable down and distance situations completely change how defenses have to respond. Suddenly, the entire playbook stays open. The running game becomes more dangerous because defenses must respect the pass. Play action becomes more effective because linebackers hesitate. Aaron Rodgers gains easier pre-snap reads because defenses can't become one-dimensional. And perhaps most importantly, DK Metcalf benefits tremendously. When defenses devote extra attention toward Metcalf, Pittman gets favorable one-on-one opportunities underneath. If defenders begin cheating toward Pittman to eliminate those easy completions, Metcalf suddenly finds more room to attack vertically. Every adjustment a defense makes creates another opportunity elsewhere. That balance is exactly what McCarthy wants. Instead of relying on explosive plays alone, he wants an offense capable of repeatedly taking whatever the defense offers until the defense finally makes a mistake. Pittman's skill set also extends beyond simply catching passes. He's known for beating press coverage, creating separation quickly, and giving his quarterback reliable targets almost immediately after the snap. Those traits become especially valuable for a veteran quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who has built an entire career on recognizing defensive weaknesses before the ball is even snapped. When Rodgers identifies favorable leverage, he needs receivers who arrive precisely where they're supposed to be. Pittman fits that profile perfectly. Another statistic highlights just how dependable he can be. On short area passes last season, Pittman recorded only 1 drop. Among receivers targeted within 10 yards, only a handful of NFL stars finished with fewer mistakes in that department. That level of reliability isn't flashy. It doesn't always generate highlight reels, but over the course of a season, it wins football games. Drives stay alive, possession time increases, the offense remains on schedule. Eventually, opposing defenses begin wearing down. All of those small victories accumulate throughout a game until the Steelers gain complete control of the tempo. That's why this move may end up being much bigger than many fans initially realized. The conversation has understandably centered around bigger names, but Pittman may quietly become the player who allows Mike McCarthy's entire offensive philosophy to function exactly as intended. If Pittsburgh consistently turns first down into an advantage instead of merely trying to survive it, this offense could become significantly more efficient than what Steelers fans have watched over the past several seasons. The biggest question now is whether all of these pieces will come together once the season begins. Can Michael Pittman Jr. become the reliable chain-moving weapon that unlocks Mike McCarthy's new offensive vision and help transform the Steelers into one of the league's most efficient offenses? Or do you think there's still one missing piece before this unit can truly reach its full potential? One of the biggest reasons this approach has a chance to succeed is that it doesn't rely on one player carrying the entire offense. If Michael Pittman Jr. consistently wins those short and intermediate routes, the ripple effect spreads across every position group. Defenses simply can't commit extra defenders to every threat on the field, and that's exactly the type of dilemma Mike McCarthy has built successful offenses around throughout his coaching career. Imagine the situation from a defensive coordinator's perspective. If you dedicate additional attention to DK Metcalf on the outside, Aaron Rodgers immediately has an experienced receiver like Pittman working underneath against favorable coverage. If you start bringing safeties down to eliminate those quick completions, suddenly Metcalf has more opportunities to attack vertically. If linebackers begin widening into passing lanes, that naturally creates lighter boxes for the running game. Every adjustment opens another window somewhere else. That's why efficient football is often more dangerous than explosive football. Explosive plays are exciting, but they aren't always sustainable. Stringing together completion after completion, constantly putting the offense in second and short situations, forces defenses into uncomfortable decisions over the course of an entire game. Eventually, someone gets caught cheating toward one responsibility, and that's when the explosive plays naturally appear. McCarthy's offenses have repeatedly shown that patience can be just as dangerous as aggression. Another interesting point is that the Steelers aren't abandoning the running game. In fact, everything about this offensive philosophy could make the rushing attack even stronger. Pittsburgh has invested heavily in the offensive line over the last several years, and they've continued building depth in the backfield. But instead of asking those runners to constantly grind through stacked defensive fronts on predictable first down carries, the passing game can now create much more favorable rushing situations. If defenses are worried about Pittman catching another quick 6-yard completion, they can't immediately crowd the line of scrimmage. That hesitation may only last a fraction of a second, but in the NFL, that's often the difference between a 2-yard gain and a 10-yard run. The entire offense becomes more balanced. This is also where Aaron Rodgers' experience becomes extremely valuable. Few quarterbacks have spent their careers diagnosing defenses before the snap as effectively as Rodgers. Give him multiple reliable options, and he'll usually find the favorable matchup. Pittman doesn't need 15 targets every week to have a major impact. Sometimes 8 or 9 efficient catches are enough to completely control the flow of a football game. That's the hidden value Pittsburgh appears to be chasing. Rather than depending on spectacular individual performances every Sunday, They're trying to create an offense where every successful play naturally sets up the next one. It's also worth remembering something Pittman himself discussed after arriving in Pittsburgh. He expressed excitement about playing opposite DK Metcalf because he understood exactly what that pairing could create. Defenses that choose to double Metcalf inevitably leave opportunities elsewhere. Pittman has built his career on taking advantage of those one-on-one situations, especially underneath, where his physicality, route running, and dependable hands become difficult to defend. The Steelers don't necessarily need him to post eye-popping statistics every week. They need him to move the chains. They need him to consistently create favorable down and distance situations. They need him to become the receiver Aaron Rodgers immediately trusts when the offense needs 5 or 6 yards instead of 30. Those plays rarely dominate highlight shows on Monday morning, but they often determine who controls possession, who wins time of possession, and ultimately who wins football games. There was another statistic that quietly reinforces just how dependable Pittman can be. On short area throws last season, he recorded only 1 drop. Considering the volume of underneath routes he ran, that's remarkable consistency. Reliable hands become even more valuable when the offense is built around rhythm passing, because every missed opportunity can completely disrupt a drive. If Rodgers knows Pittman is almost always going to secure the football, those quick throws become extensions of the running game. Instead of risking difficult deep passes on every series, Pittsburgh can repeatedly force defenses to tackle in space, execute long drives, and defend every blade of grass on the field. That's exhausting for opposing defenses over 4 quarters. It's also important to remember that Pittman won't be the only player benefiting from this philosophy. Freiermuth can become another reliable target working